I was born in the Bay Area, to broke parents that had to hustle every day to keep bills paid and mouths fed. I'd never known any other way than just enough for tomorrow, but we were surviving. And to continue to survive, we'd have to move from violence, from cages, from fear that each day could be the last. So we did, and we never stopped. My parents split, but they never planted roots. Consequently, I'd be bouncing around, rootless, until I landed in the Central Valley.
The Central Valley is home to many peoples and cultures. At the beginning of time, it was home to many native tribes, one of them being my tribe, the Tachiyokut Indians. We lived in peace and tranquility. We were hunters and gatherers. We respected Mother Earth and her offerings. But as time had passed, we were hunted and expelled from our land. When miners and farmers settled in our area, our tribe was forcibly relocated to Kalinga in modern-day Fresno County.
The cycle only makes the rich guys richer, and we stay in the same place, only working more and more hours for the same minimum wage. I think many people in the Central Valley are living this reality, and it doesn't sit well with me. But I'm only 14. I can't vote. My parents can't vote. My siblings can't even vote. What can I do?
You're never too young to start making a change and letting people hear your voice and thoughts, because the youth always inherit and innovate the revolution.
Hi everyone, my name is Cecilia Moreno. I just wanted to give a quick land acknowledgement, kind of like where we at. I'm gonna post in the chat right now a link. If you go to this link and you type in an area where you're at, you should be able to direct yourself to a place in California or around the world where it's indigenous lands. So if you're in Tulare County, Fresno County, or anywhere in the Central Valley, you are in Yokut land. So the tribe that I'm from, like I mentioned in the video, I'm from the Tachiyokut people right there in Lemoore, California. I'm also with Chumney, so it would have been like Tulare County, also Woodlake area. So, you know, you guys are all on indigenous land, and there's a little link in there already. You guys can look it up. So yeah, just a little land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good evening, everyone. My name is Estela Inés Galvan, and I'm part of the activism coordinating team. And I just have the pleasure to welcome everybody. Thank you for being part of this webinar, Social Change in the Central Valley, from the Public Office to Sustainable Community Upliftment. We hope this webinar will contribute to increasing the public's understanding of how political activism can contribute to creating a more democratic landscape in the region. So a bit of a background, the American Friends Service Committee, Pan Valley Institute, in partnership with the Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities Department of Theater and Dance, launched the Activism Fellowship to build a program that inspires Latinx Indigenous youth to leverage the arts and create provocative programming that advocates for the change they want to see in the world. It is also important to note that we believe youth have the power to creatively intervene in dysfunctional political systems, and that the cultural work can challenge the history of invisibility, marginalization, and social inequity that exists in the Central Valley. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to Ariana Cruz, who's also a fellow, and will share more in depth about the fellowship program. Ariana.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Social Change in the Central Valley from Public Office to Sustainable Community Upliftment event tonight. Before we begin, I want to introduce the fellows and our values within the Activism program and within our film. So the film that you just, the preview that you just saw is where it's going to be a longer film that targets the Central Valley and really thinking of alternatives to organizing and kind of ways that are going to uplift our community more than just, you know, voting. Voting is important, but I think as young people that have seen like the shortcomings of the power movement that were in the 60s, we're able to see how representation is good, but it's not, it doesn't end there. So that's kind of where we're framed at. And I want to I want to introduce the Activism Fellows team. We have Cecilia, a Yoka Native educator who's connecting from Merced County. Meche, a dope community member who is also connecting from Merced County. Maria, an inspiring animator who's connecting from Fresno. And myself, Ariana, a Central Valley educator who's connecting from Tulare County. And I kind of want to explain our values a little bit to you. And as the film, you see that it's based in the Central Valley. So we're kind of wanting to show the Central Valley having rich roots and history, but also acknowledging that what it means to be displaced on stolen land, and how the effects of coloniality, modernity, capitalism has translated into limitations and opportunities and prosperity in this region that are solely based on Western standards and are dehumanizing not just to us as people, but to our community as a whole. And that really makes it difficult to imagine a different reality, because the normalization of abuse and exploitation and injustice has been so ingrained in us that we don't really question it. At a certain point, we become numb and we're under the state of amnesia. And then when we wake up out of that state, we're forced to imagine a life that's not the one that we've been living. So due to those values, our film and the program are inherently abolitionist point of view. Just as young people, and seeing what has and hasn't worked, I think has really forced us to be in that place. And it's very exciting, but also scary, because we don't really have a type of organizing like the one that we want to exist. So like working on the beginning stages is super important. And we really want to talk about the intersections of coloniality, capitalism, and white supremacy in relation to the Central Valley. Because I think the Central Valley is a large region, but I think it's like so much of what's going on here is talking to like what's really going on in the more bigger context of the world. So I think it's super dope. And also, just a side note, our film will be available starting January 25th. That's a little bit about the fellowship and our values, and I'll pass it on to Estela for the bios.
Thank you, Ariana. I will be sharing about the panelists that are participating in today's webinar. And I will start with Laura Garcia, is a Fresno native residing in Caldwell District, a 2017 graduate of California State University, Fresno. She is currently serving the city of Fresno as a council assistant for Council President Miguel Arias. Laura was recently elected to Caldwell Recreation and Parks District Board. Jessie Ornelas is a resident of Merced, a California State University Fresno graduate. Jessie has several years of experience in grassroots organizing, using his own life lessons to empower youth in his community. Jessie currently works at a youth leadership institute as a program coordinator for Rise and Lift in Merced. He was elected to Merced City Council and will soon be taking office. Supervisor Lee Lohr, a Merced County native, was employed at the Merced County Office of Education as an assistant to the county superintendent and executive director of Merced County Education Foundation before being elected to the Merced County Board of Supervisors in 2017. Supervisor Lee ran a successful re-election campaign in 2020. And Jewel Hurtado is a 20-year-old mother and college student currently serving as one of City of Keensburg's youngest council members. Jewel's interest in public service was influenced by her involvement in leadership positions early in her academic years. She is a candidate for Fresno's EOC Board of Commissioners. If elected, she will be responsible for overseeing the $100 million annual budget that Fresno EOC receives to fight poverty and increase equal employment opportunities in Fresno. And we have Daniel Peñalosa, a resident of Porterville, used his experience as a community organizer to run a grassroots campaign fueled by a community engaged approach. He is currently serving as a council member for the city of Porterville. Welcome, everybody. I'm so inspired by reading everyone's bios. And once again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you. Ariana.
Thank you for sharing those bios with us, Estela. And our first question is going to be read by Cecilia, one of our activism fellows.
Hi, everyone. So I have a first question for you to answer. Prior to becoming a political figure in your community, what changes were you working towards? And we can start off with Jesse, I believe was the first one.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for that land acknowledgement in the beginning, and I feel that we can't properly acknowledging the rightful owners of this land without making sure that we're doing the footwork to give that land back in forms of liberation. So this month actually makes 10 years that I've been a Brown Beret. I've been involved in a couple of different national organizations in a leadership role, even serving as a national commander for a short time, and some other things. And so, like, the one thing I've always been working on is everything I do is with the revolutionary consciousness, and when I say revolutionary consciousness, I don't mean in the Bernie Sanders type of way. I'm talking about actually being, freeing ourselves from the current system and replacing it with a new one that is based in humane principles. But I've had several different projects along the way. Some of them being, filming the police here in Merced. I was spotlighted years back and got lots of pushback for it. Just teaching young people about their culture, and then through my career at Youth Leadership Institute, just building the capacity of young people and giving them the resources that they need to heal and actually like flourish in this vile system that we're all involved in, right? Making sure that young people have the opportunities to sit with elders, decolonize their minds and their spirits, in order for them to transform and to be really start pushing back against this system. I have a good time, doing what I do. It's really, actually my purpose in life, right, is to be a revolutionary and create, opportunities for young people to gain liberation. I'm always gonna, go back to liberation, because even though like policy change and advocacy is very important, right? Because we can't let we can't let our young people starve to death in the current system and not be willing to fight the current system. So it's like a battle on two fronts, right? One of them is within the belly of the beast, and the other is the other one is gaining liberation. But the one thing I've always been working on since the beginning is holding police departments accountable. I had at one point, I've worked with several different families that have been impacted by police brutality. I've marched in almost every city in the Southwest. We've shut down freeways and really made life hard for law enforcement officers that have taken lives. I've kind of made my bones in the movement doing that. It helped me realize that like the type of justice that we need in this world won't come in a ballot box. We won't see it written in a ballot. Like the only way that the change that we want will come is if we change it ourselves. I could talk all day, guys. So thanks.
We can go ahead and go to Lee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, fellows, for the opportunity here tonight. Prior to becoming a political figure in our community, I was working, and I still am working toward equity, social justice, and a common agreed upon culture and language. I do want to clarify that I did not win re-election this year, boo, but was very successful in other ways. I was successful in engaging and increasing the interest of very young people in our race. And so to me, that is a success because that builds the pipeline into our voter base and into our potential elected officials base. Everything that we do is a part of local politics. It feeds into local politics, local policies, and community development. So I've been volunteering with nonprofit organizations for over 30 years. And I took every free opportunity to learn. I took every free opportunity I could get my hands on to build my foundation, build my knowledge, become more of an equitable person myself. I was a young participant in one of Pan Valley Institute's programs in 2000, which really helped build my foundation. And as you can see, building people, changing our community takes years, often generations, to create that change that we want in our community. So overall, working towards equity, social justice, and a common agreed upon culture and language.
Jill, you can go ahead and go.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. And thank you so much to the fellows for the invitation to be here among such amazing electeds and community activists and leaders. As mentioned, I'm a council member here in the city of Kingsburg, but before I became an elected, and I still am just a community organizer, and it all comes back to my roots and where I grew up. So my grandparents fought with Cesar Chavez in the farm workers movement to bring that social justice and to see somebody like me even be elected to office in the first place. My ancestors before me really paved the way for me to be here today. For me to be here today. Sorry. So I just want to, I'm just thankful for us, yes, acknowledging the land that we're on, but also acknowledging those ancestors who came before us, who have fought so hard to be here. With that being said, before becoming a political figure, I did voter registrations. I did my best to involve young people in the picture as much as I can. As mentioned in the video that we watched, not everybody can vote, right? And so it is also about lobbying our elected officials to do what's right. Politics for me isn't about red versus blue and data and polls. And I say this all the time, but politics is about the air that we breathe and the water that we drink and the roads that we have or do not have and the sidewalks that we have or do not have. And for far too long, working class families and people of color, quite frankly, have just been left out of the picture and their voices have been ignored. And I think what we're seeing right now, and we've seen movements like this happen before, is that we're stepping up, we're speaking out, and we're telling them enough is enough. We're reclaiming our time. And that is what I work to do, is to continue to build this movement. As council member Jesse Ornelas mentioned, liberation, we are all working together. And it's not about one person or one candidate, but it is about all of us coming together to see a better future for everybody. So thank you.
I believe it's Laura.
Hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank the Pan Valley Institute and everyone involved in putting this together. So my name is Laura Garcia. I am a Fresno native. I was born and raised in an area called Calwa in the city of Fresno. So it's southeast Fresno. So in the area, you know, where Calwa is typically not really well known for, it has sometimes high violent crime. It's not really well known, I guess in a positive light. But I have a lot of great experiences there, and I had a lot of great experiences at the local park. That's one of the reasons why I decided to run for the Calwa Recreation Park District, the board of directors this year. And thankfully with my campaign, I was able to reach over 50% of voters and get their approval. But just a little bit about me, you know, as I mentioned too, I was born and raised in Calwa. I came from farm worker immigrant parents. My mom came from Jalisco and my dad came from Colima. And they really instilled in me the power of activism, the power of community, and the power of standing up for others and standing strongly for what you believed in. I would say that my first exposure to politics was and community engagement and activism was my mom. So my mom at a young age, as a young mother at our local school, she noticed that it was kind of moving in the wrong direction. One of the moms involved in PTA was funneling money to her own personal accounts. And so my mom didn't speak English well. My madrina didn't speak English well, who was also part of that PTA group. But they managed to convince English-speaking parents and people within the school system to vote for another candidate, another family who was going to be acting for the best interests of our local schools. So just seeing, my mom and my madrina to be able to make such a, I guess, vote one of the PTA were presidents and vote a lot of the PTA parents out who weren't doing what was best for the school. I guess just seeing that and the power of community and, what just two moms who put their heart out and give it their all, just seeing that, I think really introduced me to the power of community and the power of what one can do. And then another thing too, what motivated me to run, and I think I was actually seeing young people and then seeing a lot more Democrats in office really motivated me to run. I'm the youngest woman on my board. And so not really seeing that many women in politics, not really seeing that many people of color in politics is what really motivated me. And so one of the things that's most important to me is just to really listen to the community and what the community needs are. I feel like our community has vocalized enough of what they want, and they've been very clear to our elected officials as to what their needs are and what their goals are and what their vision is. And I feel like oftentimes they just aren't heard. So my goal, as an elected official really is to just listen to what the community needs are and act upon them. I think we need to build more trust in our community. I think we need to be a lot more transparent and upfront with the community. And I think that they need to lead the decision making. They need to lead the decision making bodies. And so that's kind of like what my goal was as an elected official. So I don't see myself as, like a representative of the community. I see the community. I don't want to speak on behalf of I want the community to present, everything. I want to give the community an outlet to present what they want, what their needs are, what their vision is. And I want, them to feel empowered and for them to actually feel like their voices are being heard in politics. I feel like oftentimes our communities are silenced or our communities are given the runaround. And so I think it's very important for them to feel that power and for them to know that there's people out there who are listening and that they can also run and that they can also make their own difference. That's it for me.
I believe Daniel's next.
Hello, everybody. Daniel Peñalosa from Tulare County and City Council member here as well. Very excited to be here with all of you and with some amazing people. And thank you to Pan Valley and the Activism Fellowship Program for putting this together. Prior to me even thinking of running for office, I literally decided to run for office in months prior to the November 2018 election. It was towards the end of May of 2018. So I didn't even have it planned, but my journey really began in 2013 with the immigration reform, movement. Then for a fight for a path to citizenship for the millions of undocumented folks across the United States. I went to this training in 2013 thinking that I was going to go learn how to help undocumented students apply for AB 540 and to fill out their application. And it ended up being a 3-day conference meeting with a full-on mission to advocate and lobby our Republican congressional elected officials across the Central Valley, McCarthy, Valadao, and Jeff Denham at that time. And so it was my first introduction to politics and really understanding what social justice meant. I didn't really know about community organizing, didn't know nothing about coalition building, had no clue of any of this. But after that conference, it really, I asked my mom, knowing my mom was an immigrant from Jalisco, Mexico, I really had never asked her, what her story was and how she got here, really dive into that conversation. I just had this, idea that I don't know, she's able to work, and so I never really asked her. And so that night when I came back after that conference, in the summer of 2013, I was able to, she shared with me, like, she shared with me that she immigrated to this country through, she crossed the desert, and her challenges, and, being undocumented in the 70s in this country as a housekeeper for wealthy people in Orange County, and just the struggles that she had. And so it really continued to empower me to continue to be involved with CHIRLA, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, which had led the conference, the movement building training that I had participated in. And so there, I was so inspired by just, getting activated, and just, really doing my best to use my privilege as a U.S. citizen to advocate for my community. And so, that's where I learned about how to lobby. That's where I ended up going to Washington, D.C., to the state legislator, learned about the power of really, how we can drive change with the current system that we have. And so ended up becoming a community organizer with CHIRLA for almost 6 years. And that's where I really kind of just continue to share and build community here in Porterville with our immigrant youth, farm working families, and just overall everyone that wanted to take action to advocate for our immigrant communities at the state and federal level. And so that's what really kind of led me to continue to get involved. Fast forward 2018, we had a city council member, who was here in Porterville, who had introduced a resolution to exclude the city of Porterville from having to comply with the SB 54, the sanctuary state law. And so that really, we, with many organizations, being driven by ACLU Northern Region, they built a coalition called ICE out of Tulare County, and many organizations participated. When it was May 1st, International Workers' Day, 2018, and that's where community really came together to stop this resolution. And from that's where it kind of, the conversation led to, how do we unseat this person here? And so that's what made me run against this person, who was very anti-immigrant, homophobic, had been there for 17 years on city council, white conservative individual, and the community came together, and we unseated him by 29 votes. And so really, I really, believe that in the power of community, that we're able to challenge those that are continuing to do the same thing, traditional way of doing this, status quo of having disproportionate representation, not just in councils, all over different boards, water boards, school boards, hospital boards, every level of government in the Central Valley. You look at the very local aspect of it, and we have individuals that do not represent our communities, that don't speak on behalf of our communities, that don't go through the same challenges that our communities are going through, but yet feel the power to make decisions that are moving monies around that could go to really provide real solutions and resources to those in need. So I'll stop there because I could definitely speak more, but happy to share more in the following questions. But thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Daniel. So I have another question for you guys. The next question is, how will you use your current role in your community to make a long-term and sustainable change? Jesse?
So for clarity, right, the question is, how will I use my role to get change, long-term sustainable change?
Yeah, it's just long-term work in your community.
Okay. I'm really grateful that like the my current term is 4 years and not like 1 year where I got to get everything done in 1 year. And I really want to, like, a focus of mine is really addressing community violence through a health lens, getting like the systems and creating mechanisms within our city to start making that happen. And it comes down to a reallocation of budget dollars. Some folks want to call that defunding the police, but really what I'm trying to do is, like, I just want the health levels and the health disparities of the people in my community to change. And in the city of Merced, almost every day you see a couple gun arrests. That means there's a lot of guns on the street. In my side of town, we got more access to guns than we do a head of lettuce. And my neighbors are the ones that are working in the fields, and so like I want to start looking at the Parks and Rec department and taking a good look at it and seeing what get an audit of it, right? Because we passed in Measure Y, which is a retail tax on cannabis, and we're getting a little bit more funding from the general fund. But I really want the city Parks and Rec department to be on steroids. I want it to provide more than what it's providing now, and that means like my part means like I need to start creating some ways for that department to make some money. I want to be able to make a big have an influence on what types of jobs are coming to my community. I really think that like growth is inevitable for Merced. It's going to happen because we have a UC here, even though the UC has had a negative impact in our community. It's caused the cost of living to go up, and at the same time, economic growth hasn't gone up with it, and so it's causing gentrification, and it's causing people to live. The people that were already living in poverty, living in extreme poverty, and so like job creation is something that intersects with community violence. It intersects with poverty, and it intersects with how well a community will grow. And so that means doing my part and making sure that that we attract the type of businesses that lead to careers, the type of businesses that doesn't require young people to get in debt through the college system. We saw today that the UC system is asking for UC Merced to raise its tuition, putting the burden on our most vulnerable peoples in the Central Valley, which is young people. It's just like pushing back on little things like that, right? And like I'm really committed to not participating in the protection of white supremacy in the Central Valley. The Central Valley is literally like the last battle of white supremacy in California. The Bay Area and the LA area, they're pretty much people of color led, people of color ran, and they're being able to push back against white supremacy at a whole different level. Here in the Central Valley, specifically Merced, even people of color, leaders of color, are protecting white supremacy with the decisions that they're making. They may not, that might not be their intention, but unexpected impacts of policy decisions are protecting white supremacy. Like there's decisions I'll be making pretty soon that are going to, that is only going to strengthen white supremacy by allowing them to make money off the sale of properties, off the zoning that we will be doing in the next couple of years, to make sure that Merced grows in a certain way, grows in a good way, right? And so the white supremacy is definitely capitalizing on the working class families here in Merced, and these are families that have lived generations in Merced, that have supported the economy loyally with blind faith. I think having this platform now is like and also with working with organizations like the Raza Unida Party to wake the people up, let them know that we don't need to be dependent and have blind faith to political parties, whether it's the GOP or whether it's the Democratic Party with their neoliberalism, which is damaging the working class in Merced, specifically South Merced. I want to make sure like that I'm able to create opportunities for young working class families to have home ownership. We didn't have a single home built that was going to be affordable to those in lower income, living on a barely livable wage, right? And so like the elected officials here in this community prior to this, you know, were focusing on developers to come here, build homes for the middle class and upper class, and left us out, thinking that you know, like houses were going to be vacant and it was going to create opportunity. What they didn't plan on was that the economic growth of our community wasn't going to grow, and the houses that became vacant got bought up by people from outside the community. You know, and so like that's why I say when we're talking about growth, it needs to be do it as in a people friendly manner. And these are all things that we've been discussing, you know, in the community for a couple of years. This isn't new. You know, the platform that I created to run for city council was called the People's Platform. It's rooted in Marxism. It's rooted in humane principles, and it's you know like some people were calling me a progressive or calling me a radical, but really I'm just a fighter for humanity. They like to call it that. I don't call myself that. You know, but like really investment in youth is key. But that won't happen overnight by itself. A lot of the other things that I've mentioned tie into that.
Thank you so much, Jesse. The next person will be Lee.
Thank you. In all my roles, whether they be personal, professional, formal, informal, I continue to be a liaison, a mentor, a facilitator, an interpreter, and builder of people. I believe that by building and developing people while being and playing all those roles, I can establish systems of change that will continue to be led by and improved by volunteers long after I leave office or long after I transition out of an initiative. While doing that, I help create paths for others to easily follow. And the key thing is to remind folks and to remember that long-term sustainable change is exactly that, long-term. So it takes time. And remember that when we vote, when we evaluate, when we analyze accomplishments in our community, remember long-term sustainable change. The more tangibles, like the number of new jobs that lead to careers, the number of new businesses that we attract into our community, the miles of roads that we fix, the amount of money that is saved or brought into our community, that's all important. But also remember to think long-term. Building the capacity of our local people to qualify and hold those new jobs that lead to a career, then build them to advance to the next level once they've been in that job for 5-10 years. So the tangibles are important. We can create those new jobs that lead to career. But remember that we need to put our people in those positions, not bring in other people, right? So save money. We can save money and bring new funding into our community, but also at the same time, create systems and practices that are sustainable, that include and involve our local people. It's harder for the average person to see and hold and understand that long-term sustainable change. And so our journey through this requires that we constantly analyze and pivot when needed. So remember that long-term is long-term, and we can celebrate and acknowledge the short-term wins, but keep going and stand by the long-term goals.
Thank you, Lee. Next person will be Jewel.
Alrighty, so what pushes me to do what I do is, you know, I'm a mother to a son with a rare brain genetic disorder, and healthcare and health advocacy is something that is very, very important to me. I'm also a community college student, and so I might be an elected official and have a fancy title and wear fancy clothes sometimes, but the reality of it is I am just an everyday average person and a low-income single mother. And so I know the struggles because I face them firsthand. My story is not unique. Here in the Central Valley, people of color and single moms here in rural communities face such hard challenges. And it was mentioned in my bio that I'm a candidate for the Fresno EOC board, and I won that seat today. And so I'm very excited to get to work to be an advocate for the people in Southeast Fresno County. Because for, like I mentioned in my first answer, for far too long, we've been left behind. Thank you for the congratulations messages. For far too long, we've been left behind, and it is time that our community members get their proper piece of the pie and not all of the resources going to just the city of Fresno, but spread all throughout the county into our rural communities. Things like housing and shelter, job training opportunities, healthcare expansion, education, mental health services, environmental issues, all of those things are at the forefront, and we have money on this board to make those what am I looking for? To distribute the wealth properly. And so I'm looking forward to getting to work on that board. I will be coming in the next year, but right now I'm a council member. And even if I wasn't a council member, even if I wasn't elected to this board, we would continue to be doing this work. But as a council member, Supervisor Lee Lore kind of spoke to this, we have to think about that long-term sustainable change. And so as a council member, my number one priority is to listen to my constituents. Before I ran for city council, a lot of people didn't really know who represented them on their council. So I think it's important to start with accessibility and to be able to be there and be their voice, but also to be a voice of reason, because right now we are in the middle of a pandemic and a lot of people don't like to wear their masks or to social distance or to be safe. And so right now we need leaders who will step up and be bold to speak out and say, we need this virus to go away. Please do your part in whatever way that looks like for you and your family. Another thing that's really coming to the forefront for me in the next 2 years as I phase out of my term is affordable housing and just inclusion overall. So thinking about, while I live in a very nice city, and a city who people might consider to have a lot of rich folks, there are people who are struggling, people like me who cannot afford to pay their rent, who cannot find a place to live, and they have a good paying job. And so that's something that's coming to the forefront for me this year, which I'm very, very passionate about. And long story short, no matter what role I'm serving in, I want to do my best to be an advocate for people who have been left out of the picture for far too long. And I mentioned that once again in my first answer, is that we're going to keep pushing to ensure we can do all that we can to provide social justice and equity for all people.
Thank you, Jewel. And Laura, if you can go ahead and go.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. I just want to say congratulations on your win. I know you worked really hard, so I just wanted to make sure to congratulate you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then just also tapping off of, just piggybacking off of what Joel mentioned, I think, as my role as being a board director for a local park here in Kawa. So, parks are essential to building our healthy communities. Parks are essential, they help improve like our air quality, right? They'll help keep kids out of, drugs, or help keep kids out of like gang activities. And a lot of us have really great memories in our parks. Like, for example, when I was a child, there was a lot of programming at my local park. So I got to be involved in art classes. I got to take field trips. I got to witness, I had my first field trips to universities, thanks to the local parks program. And so one of the main reasons why I ran is because when I was a child, I had all of these great opportunities at parks that I'm no longer seeing really for our children. And unfortunately, too often, that's one of the first programs that gets cut is our parks department. And it's one of the most needed and essential programs to help keep your community safe and to help keep your communities healthy. And I've noticed, over the years, our parks in northern sides of Fresno, are improving. Some of those parks also have great amenities that our parks just do not have in southern Fresno. So the main reason why I wanted is because for children to have some of the same opportunities that I had when I was a kid. Just because they're essential to improve academics, they're essential to improve our health, they help reduce our crime. But more importantly, it's a place for us to build memories and a place for us to spend time with our families and loved ones. So that's one of my main goals and ambitions, is for our local parks. And one of the main things that also too, I think in my community, a lot of people don't know a lot of these roles and what they do. So for example, in my community, a lot of people didn't really know that our local park was governed by a small board. A lot of people aren't asked to be involved. A lot of people aren't asked for their input on events that are going on there, or even necessarily invited. I think now there's a little bit more of a push to be more engaging and transparent, but I think that should be a precedent. I think that should be instituted, I think, in any government agency, to involve the community in every decision making that you make, to involve the community and help them dictate events that they want to see, programming that they want to see, and involving them and the youth in those programs as well, to help lead those programs, to help coordinate those programs. So that's I guess, to answer the main question about how, I want to create long-term and sustainable change, is I want to involve the community to a level that they've never really been involved before. Help them lead, their own events that they want to see. Help them lead programming that they want to see. Help institute things that the youth want to see as well, for themselves, for their children. So that's my main goal and my mission, is to really push this board, who hasn't always been transparent, who hasn't always followed some things even as simple as the Brown Act, to really push them to be more community friendly, to engage the community more, and to just look at creative ways also to generate more revenue, and to also help and make improvements to the park. In my local park, I used to take swim lessons there, and that park has had their swimming pool closed for over 10 years. That park has had the community center closed for over 2 years because the fire burned part of it down. That park has also, it's open like for some classes, but part of it was burned down. That park just really isn't living up to its full potential. And I think that that's what our communities, especially right now during something like COVID, especially when our communities are being hard hit the most, they really need a safe space. And they need somewhere where they know that they can go to get resources, somewhere that they know that they can find programming that they're interested in. So that's just my one of my goals for long-term sustainable change, is just really involve the community to a level that they've never seen before, and for them to feel like we as board members are listening to them, and so that they have a trusting relationship with us too.
Thank you, Laura. Daniel?
Yeah, so for me on this question is really being present in whatever capacity it can be, supporting legislation that is supporting the issues that I care about as well, and that I feel that we need to be focusing on as well, even outside of city council. A lot of times, people think that maybe because we're just council, we just have to worry about talking about cities change and just stop there. But I think that we can using my platform as a council member to really be present in signing on to resolutions, in whether it's participating in events that will support what I believe are issues that matter to me as well, and I think we should be elevating. Just going back to the whole conversation about racial equity. The Black Lives Matter movement, I think there was a point where, even, just our council, no one really wanted to participate in those in those marches because they didn't see how it meant anything, right, to communities. And for me, it was just like bizarre to realize that people are kept in that mindset that I just need to focus on the things that are directly I can see and that I have power to influence. Whereas, being present does make a difference. Having, people that not only just going to be there present, but also advocating at whatever level and capacity that they can. I think for long-term and sustainable change, I really feel that power building, it doesn't stop with electing people that are going to do good that we think are doing good, or that say they're going to be doing good, or that we know that have a track record of doing good for our communities, right? It doesn't end there. So for me, it was a lot of times we see people get elected into office, and then they build up momentum to get elected, they win, and then it stops there, right? We have that person there, they got elected, they're good for a community, that they can make decisions on behalf of our community, right? But I think I like to see myself as like, how do we continue to build momentum for communities after we win an election, right? So how do we continue to organize on the issues? How do we actually lead, not just lead by making decisions on the dais, but actually go in the communities, talk to the young people, talk to working class families, have listening sessions, have meetings with them, be proactive and not just wait until you receive complaints, but actually go out of your way to talk about these issues, to really educate the community on how how things are working behind the scenes. Because something that is basic as me knowing how do we get some an agenda item onto the agenda can be basic for me, but someone that has never participated in politics or in the process of local government could not know that, right? And something as simple as understanding district elections and who your district representative is in the city, understanding the role of your commissions and advisory boards, really knowing how to maybe, or even something as basic as organizing around an issue, right? A lot of community residents don't really have a grasp for that, right? And so how can I use my platform, my understanding of things to really be proactive in that way as well? And then just understanding that at the end of the day, even without titles, we can make a difference in our community, through organizing, whether it's through making decisions, of course, on city councils and governing boards. But even without a title, there's amazing people that are doing amazing work, without being in an elected office. And so supporting that as well, and realizing that without movement, there's no change, right? So what are we doing to continuing to make movement happen in our communities? And more than anything, I think education along the lines of what other folks have mentioned, especially our immigrant community, just doing organizing. I feel like there's a huge barrier of language that exists within governing boards, and not having access to understanding what really is happening at the local level. And so what can I do to really, I want to work, to continue to leave, at least leave a legacy of where at least people will be more educated on the how things happen at a local level. And in addition to that, young people, of course, I actually introduced a leadership program in the city of Porterville to focus on high school students. That's going to be led by the city of Porterville in their last budget. And so it was approved by the council, but it's going to be, for me, just a beginning, an introduction to really getting young people to understand how local government works. Because I think one of the reasons why we have never really had young people engaged is because the system itself that we currently have at the local level really creates the barriers for young people not to feel empowered or engaged in these conversations. So for me, it's really beginning to do that work, and hopefully, inspire young people to believe themselves, to to be in these positions of power, to really drive changes, community-driven changes for the city of Porterville long term. So yeah.
Thank you, Daniel, for those amazing words. We're gonna go ahead and get to our second question, which is going to be, I believe, by Meche.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you're all staying warm in this cold night. I'm kind of cold, so I'm wearing this really fluffy sweater. So my question for Jesse and everyone is, what are some needs that you have identified in your community, and what structural or systematic changes do you think need to be made and to ensure that these needs are met? And I know it was a handful, so I'll put it in the chat. But go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, Meche. Your jacket's dope. Yeah, so earlier I had mentioned, I also wanted to echo what Lee Laura was saying about the investment in people. We could attract the dopest industries to come into Merced, and if we don't have the labor pool that's qualified to fill those jobs are either going to go somewhere else, or they're going to attract people into this community, and just kind of reinforcing gentrification. I think that, like, elected officials on all levels in the Central Valley really need to focus on that, right? And that I think it's like I always say a battle on a couple of fronts, but it's like there's a couple aspects of this that need to be addressed, and that's definitely making sure that our labor pool is qualified for these jobs, and then at the same time making sure that we're attracting the type of jobs that doesn't require a college education. just just being somebody who's like impacted by the system, formerly incarcerated, gang involved, addict in recovery, who thought the way out of poverty was going to be to get an education. All I got was a degree and $29,000 of debt. And so it's like making sure that our young people know that there's another way to go. But like I had talked about, the local Parks and Rec department. I think one of the systemic changes I could change there is so here in Merced, Parks and Rec doesn't mean like the parks that we go with our family and play with, and the recreation, like the programs. It's actually city, like the city works and park. So any dollars that go towards Parks and Rec, within the next 4 years, like I really want to address that and put like the city maintenance with its own department, and then changing the name to Parks and Rec to actually Parks and Community Enrichment, where we could have programs that are play the part of a prevention program to help curb the community violence that's been happening in Merced, and also like the generational incarceration of families of color due to the war on drugs. That's that my family is a victim of, right? And making sure that we're able to really have resources for young people and impacted people to not just heal but get job training to be able to support their families. And that's like one in itself where I think will also like complement some of the other tasks I have on my to-do list. I hear like the chief of police here in Merced wanting to like improve the relationship between the people and his police department. I think that there isn't an elected official on that city council that knows the community as much as I do, especially the most impacted and those that are participating in community violence. So I think I could probably unintentionally be of some use to law enforcement there. One of the things I want to create, is a new committee, and I want to be a community committee for addressing violence here in Merced. Like if the city wants to be able to attract industries, they're not going to want to come to a small city in the Central Valley where there's shooting deaths every week. Like I'm always being impacted by violence here in Merced. Through my life experiences, I've grown relationships with people that one of my childhood friends is in ICU right now with a bullet in his brain. And I know that I'm not the only person that knows him in this community. In fact, there's probably 3 houses on my block that knew this person close, right? And so there's like 3 families impacted by trauma just on one street. Anybody that knows what adverse childhood experiences is knows that the ripple effect of trauma goes for generations, right? And so like I feel like that's what I'm good at. I think that's like how I could best serve my community is leading with that type of work. I plan on having community circles with my districts. I'm going to make it one of my goals for next year, and that would allow me to use city resources and staff to have community circles. I don't do town hall. I mean, I'll do a town hall, but like I like to decolonize the way I do my work, and so like the only way to build community is by doing it in circle and sharing medicine and then sharing food with my neighbors. Like I had a tight election. I won by 100 votes, and so that means there's an area of my district that their thoughts and values aligned with one of my opponents. And so like it's very important that I take into consideration their wants and needs too. It's not just like I live in the hood, right? My opponent lived on the other side of my district, which was like a little bit better as in terms of like economy wise. but I gotta, you know, also take them into consideration if I want to be like a good leader and mindful leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse, for tackling that question first. That was beautiful.
In terms of needs that I have identified in our community, Jesse touched on it. We need to build capacity and a partnership between electeds, community residents, policy people, social influencers, and that includes community leaders and funders. We need to take time and work quickly with these groups. As one of the other speakers stated earlier, you don't need a fancy title and a formal position, but you do need to take the first steps, because if you don't do it, who will? In terms of structural changes, the structural changes that I made and those that need to be made with the county government system, one is modeling the way, two is creating change in the culture, even when it isn't popular, and three, encouraging replication or ensuring replication. Now, it might sound impossible, and it might not be important to most people, because what the average person is used to when it comes to improving our community is something tangible like a community cleanup. Community cleanups are great and very, very much needed. There are some neighborhoods in our county that need the attention, and it's usually, the community cleanups are usually put on by an elected official. And you can see it happening. It's tangible. You can take pictures of it. You can see who is there. You can quantify it. It's needed. Yes. It makes you and the community feel good. You can see the transformation right away. In doing that, though, you have to build people to continue those cleanups, whether they be a formal established cleanup or they be regular every day, every week cleanups. And I'm going to give you examples of modeling the way. You see trash, you pick it up. No one is there to see you pick up the trash. No one is there to take a picture of you. No one is there to see the immediate cleanup, but it's being done, right? When you see trash, you hold people accountable. People who throw trash in public right-of-ways, you hold them accountable. Few people see you doing it, and they either one, do the same, or they do nothing. So if you build a culture, you change the culture by multiplying. So you do it, other people do it without that formal picture taking, without the public acknowledgement, and then you hold your neighbors, you hold other people accountable. That is sustainable. That is easily replicated. Whereas if we leave it to elected officials, or if we leave it to community leaders to hold those formal community cleanups, it'll happen for a month, a year, and then it'll stop. So we need to take time to build people, because when you build people, the people can then build more equitable policies and practices. We talk a lot about policies, but oftentimes practice wins over policy. So you want to build people to change those practices. Over time, your impact is larger and more sustainable.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it to Jewel now.
I'm coming on, I promise. 1 second. Okay. I have my baby. I mentioned I'm a mother, right? 2, 3 years old. And he's over there now, but he might come say hi. I know the question was what needs have we identified in our community, and kind of once again back to a couple of the things that I was talking about earlier. Affordable housing for me is one of the huge issues that I've identified, because I face that challenge firsthand, and a lot of my family members and friends do. Another thing is college affordability. Right now, I am a community college student filling out my application to transfer in the fall, and I'm not going to a super fancy college. I'm going to a CSU, but even for some people, that is a huge barrier to try to get there. I have a family who's extremely supportive. I'm able to live with my grandmother. I have a great support system, a co-parent, my mother, like just all this family support, who do so much with so little. But that is not the case for everybody. Not everybody has that support system, and they have to go straight to work. And so that leads me to job training. That is something that is super important, and a need that we a need that I have identified in the community, meaning lack of jobs, but also lack of that training and everything you need a college degree for. And that hurts people of color. That hurts working class people the most. Healthcare accessibility is another huge issue that I have seen, especially here in the Central Valley. Not only is healthcare not an option for people who aren't wealthy, but in some of our rural communities, we don't have pharmacies or healthcare providers or clinics. And so that is another huge barrier for people, is just their human right, which is health. And it just really hurts, because there are families who not only are being sprayed with pesticides and don't have clean drinking water, but then they can't go to a doctor to help talk about those concerns. I mean, I have a huge list here and I could go on and on, but at the end of the day, one of the biggest things that we are facing here, especially the Central Valley, is poverty. And so my mom and I and a really good friend of ours started a nonprofit called Rural Communities Rising. And it's just, our main goal is to uplift those rural communities who have been left behind for far too long. The reason that we started doing this is because my mom heard a story of a lady named Laura who lives in Raisin City. And their little community of Raisin City had just faced a fire, and a lot of their little town and homes were burned down. They had no running water for, I think it was almost a week. And Laura went to the grocery store and she noticed an elderly woman with no shoes on. She just had no shoes on. And Laura gave her own shoes to the elderly woman who was there at the store. And so these are the kinds of issues that people are facing, of course, all throughout the United States, but of course, here in the Central Valley. And it's heartbreaking, but I look forward to the next question to talk about what we feel we can do here in this space to help address those issues.
Thank you so much. Laura, you want to take the mic?
Yes. Yeah. I think your question was, right, identifying needs in the community and also some of the structural changes that we would want to make to have those needs met. So a lot of the needs, I think, in my community, I think just beyond even my role, are good access to education, good access to green spaces, good access to jobs. We live in the southeast portion of Fresno, where we have a lot of companies like Ulta, companies like Amazon coming in, right? These these uber wealthy corporations, but they're not really investing back into our communities. And in fact, they're having more detrimental effects into our community in terms of our air quality. They provide people with seasonal jobs, but they're not providing them with jobs with livable wages, with good health benefits, with good health outcomes. And I think that's really having a detriment, and will be having a detriment in the future. So I really, I really want to see less of those in my community. And I know that we have a plan right now with the city of Fresno developing to help help decide the future, decide the future of the zoning in our area. So in terms of land justice, I really want to make sure that in my role, I'm able to really involve the community in some of the decision making that's going to be happening outside of our park or outside of our area. So I really I want to make sure that in my role, I help create a hub. I help do a lot of community building and help develop the community a lot, to help them get involved with whatever it is that they want to be involved with, whatever it is they feel the need to be involved with. So communications has been one of my strong suits in terms of getting a hold of the community. I'm not the best public speaker, but when I am at your door, I am a really good communicator with my neighbors. So that's something, one of my talents I want to be able to utilize is help build off the community, help them develop what it is, and help develop a hub for them for whatever it is their needs are, whether it is they want to be more involved with the city, whether it is they want to be more involved with the school system, or whether it is they want to know how to create effective change or find out more about different resources for health, resources for banking, whatever it is that they may need. So those are some of the structural changes I want to make, because I know our community has a lot of questions. And unfortunately, when I spoke with a lot of the residents in my neighborhood, a lot of them mentioned that, they haven't really had much outreach to them in terms of, well, it can be anything, not just elected officials or during campaigns. They haven't really felt much of a presence of anyone really going into their neighborhoods to try to speak with them, to try to get their opinion on what it is they want to see in their neighborhoods, what they value. So I want to help create that trust. I want to help create a hub for the neighbors to kind of like help organize and help them dictate what it is they want to see in their neighborhoods, what future it is that they want to have there. So that's sort of the things that I want to help create. So that way, when things, something like us, we have a specific plan over here in Southeast Fresno. So that way, when, you know, some of the things like that come up, our neighbors are aware of it, our neighbors are involved, and our neighbors know also how to get involved. So that's something that I've kind of really been wanting to work on too, is how do I build that infrastructure? How do I help build that infrastructure within my own neighborhood so that they can take ownership and they can organize, you know, on their own and help put things as something as simple as like an agenda item. How can they help do that and help dictate, you know, what we as elected officials are going to be deciding on?
Wow, thank you, Laura, for that. I think the last panelist is Daniel. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. I would say that some of the needs that I see are definitely for sure what's mentioned already, youth investment. So investing in our youth in leadership opportunities and mentorship opportunities that are catered around them, you know, because I feel like sometimes leadership and you know, youth programs, sometimes, at least here in Tulare County, most of them are very much catered around, you know, you have to be a brilliant student, you know, kind of thing. And you have to be, you know, have a GPA of this or that. And then we're going to invest in you, right? But a student that has like a single parent who maybe have been homeless, you know, during high school, or who has someone incarcerated, right? Like providing those mentorship programs that are catered around those students, I think will be very meaningful and ensure that we can have that as a priority, and as well when we talk about youth investment. Other things in my community, specifically the unhoused community members in our city, definitely something that we need to continue to work and address. And when we talk about structural changes, I think just the way our county and those in positions of power see the unhoused community, you know, as many of them may see them as a burden. Many see them as like, okay, we have to create these programs, but yet offer no opportunity for the unhoused community to be part of the development of those programs, which makes no sense to me. And so how do we structurally change also the way that government views the issues that are in a community, right? A lot of times government sees issues as you know, these are bad things that are happening, but we're not willing to really get to to understand the humanity aspect of the issues as well that people are going through, right? And so the other thing is really something that I really want to do in the next 2 years is consider so right now, city council members in the city of Porterville are paid $40 a month to be on council, which I think has created a barrier of who has access to local government and who's going to run for office. You're not going to see a working class family member, at least here in Porterville, we haven't seen it as much, where they're going to, you know, farm worker community member that's going to run for office, because you know, how are they going to survive from $40 a month being on a decision maker and having to do their job, right? So one of the things that I do want to consider is paying at least council members a minimum wage of certain hours per week, that they can at least get paid for the time that they're investing in community and doing work for as a council member. We'll see how it goes. There was an attempt in 2014 to do this, and it was shot down. But I think that's why we haven't seen a city council that is working class reflected or reflected of the community, because who's going to run for city council is those that have money to do it as a side, as a hobby in a way, or as a way to, you know, to be, you know, because that's what they wanted to accomplish in their life goals, right? And so you have businessmen, you have people that are retired, they're running for office, whereas, you know, working class families, immigrant families here or students too, are not able to really think of being in this position of power. So I think structurally it's changing that dynamic and really seeing if we can actually do that soon, to encourage people to actually not only, of course, not running for just for to get paid for it, but really be able to sustain themselves in these positions as as well, while they're having to work jobs as well outside of that, right? So I think that's something that I'm definitely interested in working on. And then just the last thing I'll mention is the way that local government sees power, right? I think structurally, at least those in power don't like whenever, at least from my perception, is that they don't appreciate power coming from organized community, which I'm like, it's a form of power that community drives forward, right? But it's really saying, you know what, like if you come out in numbers to a city council meeting to talk about an issue that matters, you city council members need to pay attention to these issues and not just disregard them as, okay, this is just something that is going to be important for this meeting. No, it's a serious issue that we should be paying attention to, and it's people telling us that we should focus on this priority for us. And so even if it's not a priority for the council, so really changing the way that government also invests in community. We always see city councils investing in public safety, law enforcement. Millions and millions, or a lot of our budget goes to law enforcement or to public services, but we never see how our monies, these monies that community members, this is taxpayer money, these are people's money, how it can go right back to investment in helping in different ways, in different areas, to actually go to the community, back to the to the people. Yeah, I think those are some of the areas that I look forward to continuing to focus on in the next 2 years here in Porterville.
Thank you for sharing, Daniel. Just because of time, I know that I have sent you 3 questions. Unfortunately, we won't be getting to that 3rd question just because of time, but there is a question in the chat from Eduardo asking y'all, how do you navigate, or how will you navigate white supremacy within the position of leadership you hold? So, Jesse, if you want to tackle the question first.
Can you repeat the question to me? I didn't see it in the chat.
Yeah, so they put, how do you navigate or will navigate white supremacy within the position of leadership you hold?
You know, I would like to say that I would just confront it, just up front, and address it and call it out for what it is. And not be shy about it. A lot of times, like here in Merced, and I'm pretty sure in other areas of the Central Valley, bipartisan, politics is all about like not upsetting either side, especially when it comes to like a lot of like county politics, like because like state legislation and legislators and things like that. But like we need to make sure that elected officials that are okay with protecting white supremacy don't feel secure in their political seats. That they need to know that somebody will be coming for their seat. I think that we also got to make sure that the grip that law enforcement, the political grip that law enforcement has on local elections, on local like leadership roles, isn't as secure as it is. Several cities up and down the Central Valley have law enforcement sitting on city councils, or retired law enforcement, or sitting as mayor, like in Fresno, and like that is a barrier to a lot of the achievements that we plan to make. And like they feel they have a lot of political power to feel comfortable enough to do that, and then have the gall to tell us that they are unbiased, right? And because if that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have a thin blue line in the middle of a flag. They wouldn't have unions lobby for them at a state level, and all of other type of things, right? And so I think that communities of color, Black and brown communities, and other people of color really need to start organizing on a grassroots level to ensure that political representation is secured for us in city and county places and other boards and commissions. Everybody always thinks that it needs to be like at a state level or at a national level, but I think that there's still a lot of ground level work that we need to do to make sure that that white supremacy isn't comfortable in the Central Valley. This is their last stand. They don't have too many other places to go in California. Angela Davis even says like the violence and elected officials like Trump and other congressmen that are supporting him through enablement, having the courage to have racist policies is a show of how desperate they are, and how scared they are of losing their grip in political arenas. And so it's just really like, folks like myself and all of y'all that are on this call is just, like, we need to keep pushing. In fact, we need to push harder. Like right now is not the time to play nice with white supremacists. During my campaign, I was actually, they attempted to physically attack me. I had organizations like the Proud Boys after me, trying to put out a smear campaign on me, and we can't be afraid. We were hearing of officials and candidates in Kern County were being stalked by Proud Boys down there to scare her from running from office, right? And so like these are the type of organizations that we're having to face in the Central Valley, and we can't do it alone. It's the only way that we can do it is with self-determination and unity and solidarity.
Thank you, Jesse, for answering that. And I believe the next person is Lee. I just asked that we're mindful about time. We do have about 7 minutes, so not to rush y'all, but if your responses can be a little shorter, I would appreciate it, because we also have a checkout kind of planned as well. But you can take it away, Lee.
Thank you. Darn, I had a long list. So grow a diverse group of allies. When appropriate, address it directly or ignore it and keep going. When appropriate, give them the same experience and educate. Regardless of what side people are on, find ways to partner or go around it. Find others to address it directly or indirectly. Elected officials and community leaders need help and backup too, so you don't have to be in a position of power to help us address this behavior, because there's power in numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And Joel, you could respond as well.
Awesome. I'll make it very quick. I just want to say that the white supremacists are getting scared because we are threatening them, and they know that their time is up. And quite frankly, the status quo isn't cut anymore. Racism isn't cool, and it has never been cool, but they are just like, they're scared. So if anything, we're doing our job, and congratulations to all the elected officials here. Keep pushing. Long story short, we also just need to start condemning it, and not electing people to office who are going to continue to support it and call them good people on both sides. So long story short, if you see an elected official that you think is favoring white supremacists or people who are racist and terrible to folks who are just trying to live their lives in their skin tone and their skin, we got to vote them out. And if you can't vote, we got to organize so that we can get racist and white supremacists out of elected office once and for all. That's what I got.
Thank you, Joel. I also agree with you. Laura, if you want to tackle the question next.
Yeah, so I'll just be very brief as well, since I want to be mindful of the time. But I think we just need to tackle it head on. And I also think that, a lot of our spaces in terms of like politics, we oftentimes have a lot of language barriers that I think what we also really need to address within our communities. For example, they're not even able to, we don't really have things in like Hmong, Spanish, and Punjabi. And I think that's also another form to tackle white supremacy, right? When we keep continuing to keep our communities out of important conversations and not letting them have a voice, I think that's also another really important and also easy way to help tackle white supremacy. And we need to listen to them. We need to stop gaslighting our communities and acting like as if all of a sudden they were just starting to find out what it is they wanted when we've known the whole time. So I think we really need to start listening to our communities, acting on what it is their needs and wants are, and then also, providing avenues so everyone can participate. That's it.
Thank you, Laura. Daniela, I believe it's your turn next.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, if someone behave, is very vocal and racist, especially if you're an elected official, I would say, definitely call them out. I mean, I would say resign, and if they're not willing to resign, then vote them out. Like it's like they don't deserve to be in a position of power, making decisions for not, for many folks across whatever district they're, especially here in Porterville, that was to happen. It would be, I would do that. I would say resign, resign, resign. You don't deserve to be in this position, and with that mindset specifically. And so I would, in addition to that, I appreciate what Laura said, because it's so true. Something as basic as providing translation services to our community residents, translation of the agendas, providing all those basic are based on principles of white supremacy. When we don't do that, we exclude our community residents from an opportunity to really be part of the process of making change in their community. So I appreciate what she said, because it's so true. And there's so many other things that I could speak about in specific, how our institutions itself play, actually promote white supremacist principles. But I definitely think that we need to continue to build community, to be conscious of what's happening around that, and to educate each other about how to make sure that we can, for sure, call it out and make sure that we are holding everybody accountable whenever they're in any position of leadership or elected office.
Thank you, Daniel, for sharing. Also, thank you all for sharing. I want to be like y'all when I grow up. It was super empowering to hear everyone. And then I'm going to pass it to Gina and Jose.
I appreciate everybody. Thank you for being with us today. And, just I'm honored to be a part of such an inspirational group of leaders that reflect the makeup of our valley. Our community lived without representation for so long, and listening to your experiences, which has been instrumental in how you are currently representing your constituents, is inspiring. So not only to me, but to everybody that is will be listening to this. So thank you for standing up for your communities. And I think what we take from this gathering today is that we acknowledge the land, our experiences, and most importantly, how do we move forward for a sustainable change, right? Where leaders like you holistically represent our valley. As the late Eleanor Roosevelt put it, this is not ordinary time, and it's not. We are amidst a worldwide pandemic that is drastically affecting our most vulnerable communities. And we hope that, continue being intentional in including those people that are struggling when it comes to your decision making. And that you also continue to inspire community organizers and young people to take leadership positions like yours. So it's been an honor. Jewel, thank you so much for your time. Jesse, also congratulations. Laura, congratulations as well. Lilor, we look forward to seeing what this and where this takes you in your career. And also, Daniel, we hope that this is just the beginning of where your leadership role will take our community. Gina?
Hi. Thank you, everybody. The fellows are asking if you have one word to write how you're feeling right now after hearing this conversation. Please put it in the chat. I want to thank, on the name of PBI and Fresno State and Activism Fellows, I want to thank you all for being here and for sharing your experiences. I think we are all so inspired to know that you are representing us and that you have change in mind and are looking to deconstruct some of those structures and build change from the floor up. We look forward to what you do next. Thank you for sharing with us and allowing us as a community to come together and to talk about these issues that are important to all of us. Thank you, Activism Fellows, for organizing this wonderful event. Thank you for all your hard work. And we look forward to seeing you all in January. We have a few more events coming up in January that please follow us in our Facebook and social media, and we will be advertising there, including the release of the video that the fellows are putting together as well. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.